Amen.
Amen. Good morning, Redeemer's Church. Come on, we can do better than that. Good morning, Redeemer's Church. It is great to worship with all of you. Why don't you take out your Bibles, open up to Mark chapter 8. Mark chapter 8 is our text this morning. We are walking with Jesus as we preach through the Gospel of Mark, learning to commune with Jesus every day. Oh, sorry. Kids, you guys are dismissed to Redeemer's Kids. You guys have a great time and enjoy that. Again, Mark chapter 8 is our text for this morning. There are a handful of times in your life where you will encounter something that is genuinely new. You might find or discover something that is new to you. You might encounter something that is a new update of something that is old. But there are only a few times in your life where you will have to deal with something and find something that is genuinely novel in your life. And as humans, we have a hard time believing in things that are new. I think we've all experienced this the same way. Most of us have. At some point in the last, 8 to 9 years, you had your wacko friend, like the friend of yours that's always doing crazy things and always talking about crazy things. He came to you at some point, like probably around 7 to 8 years ago, and he told you that you needed to do like this crazy, with some crazy idea, something you needed to do. He told you that you needed to buy Bitcoin, right? How many of you guys had that conversation at some point a long time ago? Yeah, a lot of you guys, right? Well, think about this. What was the price of Bitcoin when your crazy friend, told you to buy Bitcoin? What was it, like $2, $7, maybe $100? And you're like, it's never gonna work, right? You can't do that. What is it? Last week, something like $60,000 per Bitcoin. All right. Now, look, this isn't financial advice in any way, shape, or form. Okay. Turn to the person next to you and say, "Don't listen to financial advice from Brent." All right. Don't do that. It is fascinating and necessary to recognize that as humans, we have a hard time believing in genuinely new things. And I have a hard time embracing new ideas when they're portrayed to us for the first time. In Mark chapter 8, Jesus, for the first time, presents a truth that is genuinely new for all of his disciples. A truth that is so groundbreaking, so revolutionary, that they will have a hard time believing it for the rest of their life. These disciples will fail to grasp the significance of what Jesus begins to teach in this text for the rest of the Gospel of Mark. In fact, Jesus will spend the rest of his ministry, the rest of his life here on earth, explaining this, because they needed this more than anything else. Their life depended on internalizing and coming to grips with this truth. Look at verse 31. And he, Jesus, began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things. This is the new teaching that Jesus is giving now to the disciples. Perhaps he's hinted at it before. Perhaps he's foreshadowed his suffering, rejection, and death before. But now he's clearly and explicitly delineating his mission for the rest of his life. And the disciples need to grasp this. It needs to impact them. It needs to change the way they look at the world, the way they look at themselves, the way they look at Jesus. Because if they can't get this truth, they'll never understand him fully. Jot this down. Point number 1, Mark is teaching, as the Christ, the Son of Man must suffer before he reigns. As the Christ, the Son of Man must suffer before he reigns. It's exactly what he says in verse 31. He began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by elders, chief priests, scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. Now, that group of three, the elders, chief priests, and the scribes, those are the ruling council, the highest political leaders, the best spiritual leaders that Israel had to offer. They were the Sanhedrin, and they ruled over everything in the nation of Israel. So Jesus describes his rejection from the leaders of Israel in this text as being threefold: rejected, killed, and raised again on the third day. Rejected, killed, raised again on the third day by the most powerful people in Israel. Jesus is killed. Now, I don't want you to miss this. I want you to just skip over it because you've read it before and you've heard it before, and not let this impact you. When Jesus calls himself the Son of Man, he's doing something very special. When Jesus calls himself the Son of Man, and when he refers to himself and identifies himself as the Son of Man, that's a very special title that would have slapped the disciples in the face. The Son of Man comes directly out of Daniel chapter 7. Old Testament prophecy, Daniel and Israel has been conquered. This is important, conquered and exiled to Babylon. They are living not in their home. They've been taken from their home and are living as slaves in the empire of Babylon, having been completely conquered, decimated, and subjugated entirely. In this context, Daniel chapter 7, at the pinnacle of the whole of the prophecies of the book of Daniel, Daniel chapter 7, Daniel himself has a vision. It's not a dream of someone else that he interprets. God's going to speak to him what he and the people of Israel need to understand in their exile. Daniel has a vision of four beasts, four nightmarish monsters. Like, take all of your King Kong, Godzilla movies that you've ever seen, any horror flick, the monster thing, Stranger whatever, all of those, take that, multiply it by 10, roll that all up. I mean, we're talking the worst of the most nightmarish monsters that you could ever, or couldn't ever even imagine with your human mind. We're talking about lions with wings, leopards with 4 sets of wings, bears just doing their bear thing, right? They're just destroying and eating everything. There's 4 sets of monsters that are terrifying and powerful and too strong for the people of Israel. Then enters the Ancient of Days, God the Father, and the Son of Man. They fly into the scene and they come in swinging, and these 4 nightmarish monsters, they don't have a chance. The odds are so stacked against the monsters that there isn't even enough content on this battle to even put into a verse. Their victory is so decisive, it's like a KO in 10 seconds, okay? We don't even get a description. There's not enough to give any airtime to. Daniel 7:13 says this. Daniel says, I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, there came one like a son of man, and he came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him, and to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed. This is what Jesus is describing himself as. Look, I get a kingdom. I get dominion. I'm in charge, and I am the point. Everything points to me and my glory. All peoples, not just the people of Israel, shall serve me. The peoples of those 4 beasts, which are actually four empires that have successively come throughout human history, the fourth being the worst, Rome. These kingdoms shall diminish and dwindle and be destroyed and subjugated, and all the peoples of those kingdoms shall serve the Son of Man, and his reign shall never end. So when Jesus calls himself the Son of Man, he is pointing to his final and ultimate victory over Rome, over evils, over every human kingdom, over every enemy of the people of Israel. He's claiming to have a kingdom that will never end, that will never diminish, that will never cease to be glorious. As Jesus calls himself the Son of Man, he's claiming to be the guy that Daniel saw in Daniel chapter 7 who reigns forever. Babylon, Medo-Persians, Rome can't do anything to him. Now you can understand with that Daniel 7 in mind, which all the disciples would be familiar with, why the disciples, Peter in particular, would have such a hard time with Jesus' claim. The Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, the scribes, and be killed. You can get and understand why it doesn't compute for them. They're like, what? Wait, how is the Son of Man, the one who rules and reigns forever, the one who suffers and dies? It just doesn't make sense to them. It would be similar to this. If I came this morning to church in the morning and I said, you will never believe who I saw on my way to church this morning. Like, I was driving here this morning. I get here a little earlier than some of you do. I was driving down Main Street, and I saw the President of the United States on Main Street. He was pushing a grocery cart to the riverbed. Right? I mean, just imagine, like, would you have a hard time believing me? Right? Yeah, regardless of how you voted and whether that would be like a fun idea to you or not. If I came to you this morning and said that the President of the United States, the guy who flies on Air Force One and has a bulletproof caravan of SUVs follow him everywhere he goes, the guy who literally has a squadron of Secret Service soldiers there to protect him at any given moment, the guy this guy who's like followed around by a guy with a suitcase with the nuclear launch buttons handcuffed to him, right? That guy, the president, was pushing a grocery cart down to the riverbed on Main Street. You'd be like, never going to happen, right? That's an impossibility. Like, the whole structure of the American society would mean that that's never going to happen. This is what is going through Peter's mind. Peter's like, nope, that's impossible. Son of Man, he rules and reigns. He doesn't suffer and die, especially not at the hands of Israel. And so for Jesus to come and say that the reigning glorious king of Daniel 7 must first be the suffer-rejected servant of Isaiah 53 and then be raised from the dead, which they would not even understand what it means. That was an impossibility. But for Jesus to say even more than that, not only that was going to happen, but it must happen. Like, it's necessary. It is essential. It is inevitable that this happens. That would be that'd be tough to swallow, right? That'd be a hard truth to receive. The word "must" in the text in the Greek, it actually means chained to. Like, this truth, this reality, like Jesus is chained to it. Like, it has to happen. They come together all the time. So we ponder this reality, and not only is it impossible to believe for the disciples, but it's offensive to Peter. Hence, Peter rebuking Jesus, which is a bold move by any account. I mean, maybe a little. We kind of understand that it comes from Peter, right? We get that. But it's offensive to Peter, this idea. Because so ingrained in his thinking is the idea, what I need is someone with power to come and to solve all my problems and to make my life better. That's what he believes. What is beyond his grasp and inherent in what Jesus is teaching in this new idea is the glorious truth that we struggle with and wrestle with every day as believers. That glorious truth is this: we worship the only God who has scars. Just ponder that for a moment with me. Of all the religions of the world, of all the made-up gods and goddesses and all the religious ideas that man has concocted, none of them would ever dare to dream of a God who is worshipped who has scars. The glory of the idea totally flew over Peter's head. That, yes, the exiles were enthralled at the idea that someone would come and conquer Babylon, and he would reign forever and usher in a kingdom of peace and prosperity. Yes, the exiles needed that. But even more so, we need, and the disciples need, this truth presented here in Mark chapter 8, that the Son of Man, before he reigns, must suffer and die, so that we could worship of God who has scars. So that we should worship of God and know his love and his mercy, his nearness, his grace in all things, his faithfulness in all seasons, to understand the goodness of his promises, and to believe in the kindness of him as our Savior. I think what's wrong with Peter is that he lacked the faith to believe in a greater victory than just winning. There was this practice that was well known not only to Rome and Roman citizens, but throughout the world. You would have heard about this if you were a kid living in Israel during the New Testament times. You'd be very well aware of this Roman practice. It had a technical name. It was called a Roman triumph. A Roman triumph was the technical name for a victory parade. You've probably seen it in a movie, right? If you've ever seen, the pastors aren't supposed to talk about movies, but yeah, if you've seen that movie, you've seen a Roman triumph, right? It's a general who's had a victorious campaign conquering lands and nations for the empire, returns to Rome at the head of a procession celebrating the expansion and victory of Rome. Now, these Roman triumphs, these victory parades throughout the city, marching throughout the city of Rome, were the greatest pomp and circumstance that you and I could ever imagine, like unparalleled in American history. You would have the whole of Rome for sure, many of the nation, all of the rulers would all show up to participate in this exhibition of strength. It was a Roman triumph, a victory parade. And they all followed the same pattern. Whether it was General Titus celebrating his victories over Jerusalem or Pompey or others, whatever, these Roman generals would all, this victory parade would all follow the same pattern. First in the parade, for all of Rome to see, would be the defeated enemies, now chained, marching at the head of this parade. They're marching to either their death or their lifetime of slavery to the people of Rome. Then behind the defeated enemies, are carted the spoils of their civilization, the best of their gold, the best of their artifacts, the best of their society, the spoils of war, including all of their harvests, all of their best of their art, all of the best of their culture on carts pulled behind them, chained. And next came the general, being pulled on the highest chariot, being led by 4 to 6 horses. The general robed in victory, purple, with a victor's crown on his head. His chariot was followed by his soldiers and his family members, who were all chanting the same words. Rome triumphs. Rome triumphs. This was bigger than any 4th of July, any celebration that we have as Americans. This was central to their society and their culture. A Roman triumph. And I imagine the victory of Jesus being more thorough and even greater. And that's what Peter can't imagine. He can't imagine a victorious Son of Man who marches into his kingdom in an even more glorious way than a Roman triumph. See, because Jesus didn't just defeat suffering and pain by being stronger. He didn't just eradicate suffering and pain from the universe. By suffering and being rejected and dying, he subjugated suffering, pain, and trials, and made suffering become a slave for our good. So Jesus' triumph at the head of his procession, there is suffering, chained, about to begin a lifetime of servitude for the good of Jesus' people. There at the head of the Roman, of Jesus' triumph, of his victory parade, is suffering and death and sin, all used by Jesus as a slave for our good for the rest of our lives. So that we would know that we worship a God who knows us, who cares for us, has compassion for us, is not only stronger than the things that we face, but is so strong he uses them for our good. And the proof of his love and victory will stand forevermore in heaven as this cross of Jesus Christ, the center of suffering and death and resurrection in a way that Israel couldn't even imagine. In this truth, the Son of Man must suffer before he reigns. This is the key to unlock everything that the New Testament teaches about trials, persecution, and pain. You've read through the New Testament, if you've studied Scripture, if you've been a Christian for even a year or more, you've read those passages in the New Testament, and you're like, oh man, how am I supposed to do this, right? James chapter 1. Consider it all joy, right? When you face various trials. And consider it all. Wait. How am I supposed to, what on earth, how is this even possible? 1 Peter chapter 4, beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trial when it comes upon you to test you as though something strange were happening to you. But rejoice insofar as you have shared in Christ's sufferings, that you may also rejoice and be glad when his glory is revealed. See, passages like this, and James chapter 1 or 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 17, if we suffer, we shall also reign with him. If we deny him, he will also deny us. That's 2 Timothy chapter 2. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. Like all these New Testament passages make zero sense unless you understand this central new truth that Jesus is teaching the disciples. The Son of Man must suffer before he reigns. Romans chapter 8, verse 16. The Spirit himself bears witness with our spirit that we are children of God. And if children, then heirs. Heirs of God and fellow heirs with Christ, provided we suffer with him, in order that we also may be glorified with him. Peter and the disciples needed to understand this truth, because what Jesus is about to declare to them next changes everything for the way that they see the rest of their life. The way that you look at Monday, tomorrow, the things that you're planning on, the way that you envision it, how you live Monday needs to change by what he says next. Jesus, look at verse 34. Jesus calls the crowd to him with his disciples. This is a very public, necessary truth for everyone to hear this morning. He said to them, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Doesn't make sense unless the Son of Man must suffer before he reigns. Unless suffering is the path to glory. Unless Christ's victory in his suffering has turned suffering to result to our greatest good. It makes no sense. And if you've read this passage many times and heard it over and over again from preaching and pulpits at churches across America, then this passage, I just pray lands on you today in a new, more hopeful way. Rather than just being oh yeah, I'm not good at that. Yeah, I should try harder. Okay, I'll try harder as long as I remember to this week, and then I'll show up here next Sunday and not remember what we were taught, right? Instead of that, which is so normal for us as Christians, God is a gracious, loving God and treats us as his children, loves us as his children. But that by God's grace, these words would be more than just a Christian cliche. Deny himself, take up the cross, follow me. Point number 2 on your outline, jot this down. As I choose to deny myself, I store up glorious reward. As I choose to deny myself, I store up glorious reward. I'm so thankful for the way Jesus says this in this text that Paul remembered, told to Mark, and Mark wrote it down for us. Because this passage, I think, is clearer than a lot of what we see in the New Testament. And a lot of what we see in the New Testament is, it seems so far off for us as Christians and so unapplicable. Because most of the New Testament is filled with all sorts of encouragement of the reward that's coming for those who are persecuted in the church, because that's what the early church was facing wholeheartedly, and we face persecution to some muted extent. We will face it more and more every day, but every time I read one of those passages about the blessing and the glory that comes to those who are persecuted, I kind of feel left out. Not that anyone should ever wish that upon anyone, but greater glory is received by those who are persecuted, then bring it on, I foolishly say. But this passage is different. Because this passage, Jesus doesn't just refer to persecution, he identifies suffering holistically, but the choice to suffer, not just to be persecuted, but also to deny self is part of that suffering that is not brought upon you as much as it is chosen by you every day. And that denial of self, which we can choose every day, results in glorious reward. Now, denying self is not the same thing as self-denial. Okay, you need to know that. That's important. Denying self is not the same thing as self-denial. Some people practice self-denial by like, okay, here's this really good thing. I'm going to diet. Here's an amazing ribeye steak. And I'm going to practice self-denial by eating the salad instead, right? We all get that. That's self-denial. Not the same thing as denying self. Denying self is so much more. Denying self implies that I'm going to stop listening to my own voice. That's what denial of self is. It's not, oh, here's a good thing, and I'll skip a good thing because I love God. That's called fasting. Denying self implies that I am no longer the determiner of my life and my choices and my direction. And it's a very necessary, realistic, and essential Christian practice. I don't do what I want to do any longer. Like, that's not how I make my choices. It's not about my preferences and what I wish to hear or what I wish to do or what I want to enjoy. I'm no longer planning my life along the contours of my momentary preferences and desires, pursuing my own agenda for my own goals and according to my own passions. I've surrendered control for the determination of my future to that which Christ has declared to me in Scripture. Now, this is the very essence of what it means to obey. And Satan hates it. Okay, if you think about the first disobedience that ever occurred on earth, Satan and his temptation with Eve, Satan's very crafty, okay? Satan's never going to show up to you and be like, hey, bow down and worship me. He's not that dumb. He didn't do that with Eve. He showed up for Eve and told her to listen to herself and that God was holding out on her. Eve, looks good, doesn't it? Fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? Looks decent, doesn't it? God's holding out on you. Don't you want to be like God? And he started speaking into her the things that she wanted to hear, the things that she was telling herself, which is the source of and origination of sin. There's something inside all of us, this voice that I have inside of me, this version of Brent that is trying to ruin me. It's in my thoughts, it's in my internal voice, it's in my thinking and the values by which I process the world, it's in my preferences and the things that I love. And I have to turn it off. I have preferences about everything. I have preferences for the way that you approach me on Sunday morning, the tone of voice by which you speak to me. I have preferences for what I'm going to eat for lunch and how I eat it and where I eat it. I have desires for my future 5, 10, 20 years from now that determine all sorts of things for my life and how I live today. Jesus says that voice is no longer in charge. I think he says it even more powerfully. Rather than just denying self, Jesus says, take up your cross and follow me. In so doing, he's commanding you to carry the instrument of your own execution while being mocked and shamed by the world, and to choose ultimately the path that leads to death. Like that's the choice of becoming a Christian. And it's no one is nailing you to this cross. You've chosen to take it up by yourself. In this, we every day die to self and live to God, die to sin and die to earthly fames and temporal fortune, die to earthly pursuits and personal preference and internal desires. We die to these dreams and these passions that live inside of us. Why? Because it's not worth it. Verse 35, whoever will save his life will lose it. Whoever will lose his life for my sake and the gospel's sake will save it. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and to forfeit his soul? For what can a man give in return for his soul? I love this text because Jesus just doesn't jump on the scene and tell the disciples to follow him in the most hardcore, difficult thing that they could ever imagine doing, to have the greatest calling, the most difficult calling to obedience, to killing self and following, taking up a cross. He didn't just do that without reasons. These 3 verses, they all start with the word for. There's 4 sentences with the word for, which essentially means because. Jesus is giving reasons why you should take up a cross. He's giving reasons for why you should deny that inner voice that tells you what you want to do and what you want to hear and how to make your own life great. And essentially, the sum of his argument is it's not worth it. There's greater glory in the path of suffering and self-denial. And in a wonderfully ironic way that Jesus is pointing out in the text, like the irony and the contrast, whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. Profit a man to gain the whole world, loses his soul. Right? All these amazingly contrasted truths is this. The choice to deny self actually results in your greatest good. Right? And we need to live like this. The choice to deny self is actually the choice to choose that which is greatest and most glorious for your soul. In this, it's almost like Jesus is lying. No, Jesus is not lying, but it's almost like he is. Give up your life. Choose death. In reality, we're choosing what's most amazing for us, and we're choosing life. The life of self-denial and the life of choosing and taking up your cross is only the loss of lesser joys. This morning, in not with a gloom, oh yeah, I'm giving up everything for Jesus face, right? I'd make more money, I'd have more fun, I'd be more comfortable, but I'm giving up all that for Jesus. But we can rejoice in our trials and our self-denial because we know that these things actually result in our greatest joy. We sit here and say, as Christians, even in the midst of our self-denial, our trials, our suffering, and rejection, and say, this is the best, most amazing life I could ever have asked for because God is with me, and he is faithful and good, and blessings are just abounding everywhere. He knows me. Like the God who created the universe knows me and loves me and calls me his child, that this God draws near to me at this. I have it so good in the midst of daily self-denial. We proclaim the goodness of God. I think this is best illustrated in a section of the New Testament that is largely neglected and often not remembered by Christians. poignant section. There's a lot going on. When Jesus is being crucified, you remember this, there's actually two guys being crucified with him. Right? Two guys, thieves, left and right, probably, maybe, all that. Being crucified with him. And we don't often think about the reality of what these two men are going through, but I think it's very instructive for this passage that we're looking at this today. Because they had to bear a cross up a hill, just like Jesus. Right? That was normal Roman practice. So as Jesus carried his cross, there were two men that carried their crosses behind him, and they were crucified with Jesus, but they're very different from each other, because all that we know is from one of them, carrying their cross was proof that God didn't care, and it was a reason to hate God. It was a reason to reject Jesus and just die angry. That's what carrying a cross is for many people. That's what suffering and trials and difficulty are for many people who lack faith in Jesus. Just a reason to suffer, die angry, and bitter. Is that who you want to be? Is that what's going to happen to you? The other is more thankful to have carried that cross with Jesus than anything else that ever happened in his entire life. Is the best event of his life on earth. Because for those who believe, bearing the cross of suffering results in greater glory that far outweighs the cost. Because Jesus, by suffering, subjugated suffering and made it the slave of our good. Oh, the depth of the riches and wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable are his judgments and inscrutable his ways. That God, before the beginning, would be driven to show the glory of his persons. That God would gather and conspire to show off the manifold perfections of his character. And in perfect wisdom, God knew exactly what was best for your soul. Not the comfortable life of ease that you all wish for yourselves, we all wish for ourselves, quietly whispering to ourselves and making our choices. In their wisdom, they knew that what we truly need every day is to behold the glory of God every day. To behold the glory of his power, which speaks galaxies into existence, holds the oceans to its borders, breathes life into dead souls, and awakens a heart to love and rejoice and value the glory of God. That we would behold the majesty of his holiness. He dwells in unapproachable light. Uncomparable, transcendent. Mere created things are unworthy to be in his presence. So beyond us is he. He must use baby words to describe himself to us in ways that we comprehend, and even the greatest of our thoughts on Jesus are mere pieces, are mere fractions of the truth of the greatness and the holiness that is true of his character. That we would behold the manifold excellencies of his all-knowing, everywhere present, all-powerful glory as He enters in to your life and is right next to you every day, at every moment, fulfilling His promises and bringing you home. That we would behold the perfections of His love, a love of a God who would come down from glory into this fallen human life to live, fulfilling His own requirements to die on our behalf, and to raise so that He might pave a path of resurrection for all those who would follow after Him. That we would behold the uncomparable brilliance of His absolute moral purity. He who has never had an evil thought enter His mind, never, ever was for a moment tempted to do that which was not perfect and pure and good and excellent. That we would behold the awesome nature of His mercy, who through kindness and goodness and faithfulness would speak to us, would give us that which we do not deserve, the reward that Christ earned on the cross for all eternity. And that by beholding the humility of His suffering, we would have great hope in this life. This life of trial, rejection, pain, loneliness. That in the humility of Christ, in His lowliness and meekness, we would see the proof for that which we desperately need to believe every day. That suffering leads to glory. And Jesus now reigns forever, and we will reign with Him and enjoy the reward of our suffering in ways that make every moment on this earth and its difficulty absolutely worth it in every way. See, as believers, we no longer face the problem of evil or the problem of suffering. We get to lean into it every day of self-denial for glory and for our joy, following after Him until He returns. Can I pray for you? Lord, I'm burdened for my brothers and sisters here. Some of them are facing things that I've never experienced and can't ever imagine. You know. Some of them, my brothers and sisters here, are dealing with past hurts that have yet to be dealt with and understood. How it could have been worth it. What you were doing through them. Father, here, like myself, we have brothers and sisters who are almost numb to the pain. It's been so long without any hope of change. And in those dark moments where everything is bleak, you cannot see the purpose or the end, Lord, I pray, Lord, that you would fill our hearts with joy at the thought of Jesus, who despised the shame of the cross, but suffered and died for the joy that was set before him. You have consecrated this path for each and every one of us. Help us see the end. Help us have eyes on the proof that is Jesus exalted at your right hand, reigning at this very moment. Give us eyes to see the glory of that kingdom where the Son of Man reigns over all nations for all eternity in a kingdom of peace and prosperity that words cannot describe. Give us an understanding and a resolution in our hearts to seek that kingdom and store up treasures there through self-denial here, that you would be glorified, and that we would be glorified when your Son returns. Lord, may we not see this just as self-denial. May we not see this just as denying self, but as a great joy and blessing which can't compare to any of the trivial, momentary things of this earth. Preserve our faith. Open our eyes and show us Jesus. We will give him all the credit in the end.
If you'd stand and worship with us, please.
My heart is weary, my soul is weak. When it seems I can't traverse the trail before me, I survey the glory of your agony, and I find the will to fight for what's before me. 'Cause you ran the race, enduring for your glory. I fix my eyes on you, the founder and the finisher of our faith. I fix my eyes on you, and the solace in your suffering is my strength. As I fight to follow, you're my righteous guide. As you train me to delight in all that's holy, heal my broken body, cure my crooked stride. Through off every weight and sin that clings so closely, I will run the race, enduring for your glory. I fix my eyes on you, the founder and the finisher of our faith. I fix my eyes on you, the solace in your suffering is my strength. You help me breathe. You're the only life I need. You died for me. You're the only life I need. You the founder and the finisher of our faith. I fix my eyes on you, the solace in your suffering is my strength. The solace in your suffering is my strength.
My life is yours. My hope is in you only. My heart you hold. 'Cause you made this sinner holy and holy. Holy. 'Cause your glory is so beautiful. I fall onto my knees in awe. And the heartbeat of my life is to worship in your light. 'Cause your glory is so beautiful. Your glory is so beautiful. My life is yours.
My life is yours.
My hope is in you only. My heart you hold.
My heart you hold.
'Cause you made this sinner holy and holy. Holy in your glory. 'Cause your glory is so beautiful. I fall onto my knees in awe. And the heartbeat of my life is to worship in your light. 'Cause your glory is so beautiful. Your glory is so beautiful. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Jesus, you are good. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Jesus, you are good. Sing it out, glory. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Jesus, you are good. Oh, glory, glory, hallelujah. Jesus, you are good.
What can wash away my sin? Nothing but the blood of Jesus. nothing but the blood of Jesus.
No precious.
Oh, precious is the flow that makes me white as snow. No other fount I know, nothing but the blood of Jesus.
Sing glory. Oh, glory, glory, hallelujah. Jesus, you are good. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Jesus, you are good. Oh, glory, glory, hallelujah. Jesus, you are good. One more time. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Jesus, you are good. Amen, Lord. You are good. And even when you call us to choose death and choose picking up our cross, what you're calling us to is deeper joy in you. To shed the things that won't satisfy and won't fulfill, and to find our ultimate joy and satisfaction and ultimate glory in you, Jesus Christ. We exult in who you are. You're good and you're kind and you're gracious, and we are absolutely humbled that you're our God. We love you, and we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Have a seat. My name's Bill. I'm one of the elders